Hi folks, first of all I want to thank Nick Dutch for making a video response to my last video, which was entitled How to Decide Whether There's an Afterlife. So I really didn't really follow Nick's reasoning in the same kind of way, but that's okay. I want to offer another perspective in this video that is very relevant to the question of whether or not we think there's an afterlife. And that is to try and get to the bottom of whatever time is. What do we mean by time? Because I think we have a very wrong view of it here in the West. And I don't even think it's a cultural thing. I think it's one of those wrong assumptions we make about reality because we're a creature. For instance, we would naturally think that the earth is flat because we have a creaturely experience of it as flat. It's only when you penetrate through to deeper insights that you can actually discover that it's a sphere. So the same, I think, is true of mind. Sorry, the same is true of time. We tend to have this view, at least I did anyway, we tend to think of time a bit like a big long film strip where you have, if you imagine all the little frames of film along the bottom here, and you have this arrow called the present that is moving gradually along it like this. So it's almost like we think that everything in the past is somehow recorded somewhere that we can't get to, but it's actually there. It exists somewhere in some dimension or other. The past is really there. And some views of this would say even that the future is already recorded in some fashion and we're moving towards it. But it's absolutely real, just like the past is absolutely real. I think that's a completely wrong view of time. Now, this is the first time I've really tried to articulate this, so I'm going to try and be very careful and slow as I try to join the dots here. But there is a big eureka moment if you can really get this. And it happened to me a few years ago. And it was one of those weird moments, and they don't happen very often, where you're just reminiscing about something or other, while out for a walk, or in my case, while I was out cycling one evening. I was reminiscing about what it would be like to be doing this 20 years ago when I was a teenager. Actually, that's more than 20 years ago. In my school days. And I was thinking, what would it be like to go through a time warp and to be back there? And I had this revelation that there was only one moment. The moment that we call the now, or the present. And everything that happens in this moment. Now, I can say that, and I know that can be taken in a kind of a ho-hum way. Okay, we get that, it doesn't really mean anything. But this hit me in a way that had me suddenly bursting out laughing. Because something had really clicked into place that wasn't there before. And later on, it was difficult for me to figure out whether I had lost that insight or whether I had integrated and it was no longer exciting. But it hit me in a way. It's hard to explain. I'm going to try to explain it. The only reason that we think the past is real, is out there somewhere and it's real, is because we have a brain that allows us to take a mental recording of events as they happen, to preserve events as they happen. But what it's really preserving is the present moment, because everything that happens in the present moment. Consult any memory that you have in your head, and you will know that when you had it, you experienced it as the present. And now you have a recording of it that you call the past. You with me so far? And you think that that past is real. Now I know the way this the instant thing you would want to say is, well, it is real because it happened, therefore it happened in the past. But these are just words that allow us to make a sort of linguistic convenient sense out of the recording device. Now let me add a little something else into the mix here. And also, you know, this thing about the future as well. This thing about the future that we're heading towards, we think of it as something real. Like, imagine you could jump into a time machine and fast forward 20 years and you'd arrive in the future. But the future is really not real. The only thing you ever experience is the present moment. So right now it's the present. Let's start to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's still the present moment. It was the present moment when I said 1. It was the present moment when I said 2. It was the present moment when I said 5. And you now possess a recording of me counting from 1 to 5. A mental recording that tells you that that happened in the past, but it happened in the present. I have no access to the future whatsoever because it's not real. What the future actually is, we think of it as something real only because we are able, again, it's to do with the brain. The brain is able to make predictions, to have hopes, fears, aspirations, ambitions. It's able to do that with itself. So it's able to predict to some extent what may or may not happen, but when those things happen, they will happen in the present. Okay? So you're starting to see the primacy of this thing called the present, that it's never anything else but the present. Now let's take another example of time in motion. Consider the wind. Think about it as, think of it a meteorological picture of the wind as you would maybe see it on a television screen from a weather forecaster. Think about, you see all the vortexes and things, you're up in the sky, you're looking down, there's all the wind, it's moving around here, there and everywhere, and they're trying to predict where the wind will be from where it has been. Are we going to have a sunny day? Is it going to be rainy? Where's the wind going next? But it's just this, and I know you can make predictions, but it's just this big boiling, churning mass of change. And aside from the human need to know what the weather's going to be like, is there any real purpose in making a recording of all the changes in the wind for all time? It's just this big changing mass of stuff that is swirling and moving and changing, and all of that change happens when? In the present moment. And there's really no need to become attached to this as a story, as a narrative, because it's all just this mass of change. Doesn't make a lot of sense to think of that like a film strip, that there's a moment that moves along. Sorry, it's back and front on my webcam. It moves along. Here's the present moment moving along. No, the present moment is this moment that is in complete stasis, like this. It's completely still, but it is in a constant flux, constantly changing. There's no past behind it. There's no future ahead of it. Everything that happens in this one moment, the now, completely still, that you are stuck in, and everything swirls around that one moment. like the wind. It's also kind of like saying, you know the old saying, you can never swim in the same river twice. Because all the particles are different, aren't they? You know, all the molecules are different. You jump into the river, you climb out, you jump in again, you're essentially jumping into a different river. It just looks the same. What has happened? Change has happened. The thing we call time has happened. But there hasn't been a movement from a real past to a real future. There has just been the present moment in continual change. And if you're anything like me, trying to wrap your head around this initially, there's an awful tendency still to think, well, okay, I get that every moment is the present. So you start to think of this timeline as that's the present, 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 that's the present. Oh, and they're all different presents. It's all different nows. No, there's just the now. None of it is recorded. There's no point. I don't see any reason, aside from the fact that the brain has a recording mechanism, there's no reason why anything is remembered. You know, we talk about the Big Bang as our best theory for the origins of the universe. And we're kind of confident that it was something like that that happened. What gives us, and we would say that happened 13.7 billion years ago, as if, and we conceptualize with our mind that moment and the space between then, or the distance in time between then and now. But the only reason we were able to make that is because we're looking at the present and we're just seeing signs of what the present was once like at a previous, I was going to say at a previous moment, but it's like we're able to see signs of the changes that led up to the present being in this fashion. But when the Big Bang, when that singularity unfurled itself into space and time, that happened in the present. And the present moved on and on and on to this. And it has no memory of the past other than the visible signs of what happened that led up to this. Just like, you know, if you happen to glance at a pond and you see ripples and there's a child standing beside it, you might think the child threw a pebble into the pond. You know what I mean? But the child threw that pebble into the pond in the present, even though you're looking at it from the present. If that makes any sense. I really think that, I don't know how successful or how well I'm explaining this, but there's a kind of a big aha moment when you suddenly realize you're existing at this moment of profound stasis called the present, that you're never anywhere else from. So you never really came from anywhere and you're not going anywhere. Because when you say I'm going somewhere, that's just you imagining a possible future, which is basically imagining the present in another state, because it's still going to be the present. So the thing to realize about this is none of this is about getting to a destination. Life is not about a purpose with an end game. Because if you reach the end game, would you not just go, I'm here, what now? You'd need another end game. There's just the present in motion, in flux, change. The present swirling with change. It's a very different take on time. There's no film strip recording. Back to the Future cannot happen because the 1950s, it doesn't exist. The things that happened in the 1950s, they happened now. They were experiences of nowness. And the only experiences of nowness that you can get to are the ones that you can get to. So, how does this tie into, the afterlife? People wish to believe in an afterlife because they feel there's a destination. There's something more than what just is. But if time is this moment of stasis around which there is a continual motion, there's nowhere to get to. There can't be. And like I said, if there were somewhere to get to, you'd need somewhere else to get to. This is why, Christian ideas of getting to heaven and worshipping God, they don't really make any sense. And when you really think about them, do they really get you excited in any way? Genuinely? That you're going to stand praising God forever? Would you not just kind of get there and you're doing that, and then you're going, okay, well, what now? What now? We've been doing this for a while. I'm getting kind of bored with this. I want to do something else. Can I please stop praising God? Because this is getting kind of monotonous. You know what I mean? Change is the whole point of it all. It's not supposed to be still in the sense of nothing happening. It's not supposed to be still in the sense of you reaching a destination and now you've got it. Now you've made it. Now nothing will change anymore. It's all about the change. So that's my big eureka moment, was the realization that no matter when you are, you're at the center of eternity. It's not about a future destination. Every moment is the center of eternity because there is only now and change. That's what it all boils down to. Now, changing. So what are we to do with this life? Well, it strikes me that the whole purpose of it then is just to have these experiences of change, whatever those experiences might be. So that's when I realize that if you don't just pay attention to what's right in front of you here and now and have fun with this, then you've totally missed the point of living. If you're always planning about what you're going to be doing next, if all of your focus is off the experience that's happening, then you're totally not living. Or if you spend your life in a continual state of regret for what might have been, you've totally missed the point. Because all you've got, all you've ever had, and all you ever will have is what is the present moment in a continual state of change. Forever. I would even dare to add, right up until the big crunch leads to another big bang, and this all comes round again, only differently. Again and again and again. Universe after universe, like breathing. And to some, this is not a satisfying answer, but it is to me, because I realize that life was not meant to be held really tightly as this thing that we must hold on to. If you really take a step back from your life and just look at all life, everything is constantly moving and changing, and one thing replaces another as birth gives way to death. Not just, I'm not talking about humans. Think about tiny organisms. Think about it, mice, rabbits, dogs, cats, primates, humans. There's just this constant, motion and change and replacement. And all we really are doing, you know, although we're very sophisticated, we really still are having the same function as those little cells, those first little cells that learn to replicate themselves. We're basically replicators. We replicate. We pop out our replacements. The energy of this form dies, the replacements go on. So see it all as a big churning of energy, where nothing ever really comes from nothing, in the sense of all cause and effect takes place with the available energy that's in the universe. And it really is just like the wind, churning and churning and churning. Nothing's meant to have a memory. Nothing's meant to last. Memory is just a convenience for a biological organism. There's just this moving and moving and moving, replacing and replacing and going and going. And when you see about it like that, you know, forms rise and fall and other forms rise and fall. And you realize that that's the dance. That's the dance that is you, that whole thing. And even though we have these little points of limited awareness that we look out upon our great universal body, even though we have those little points of limited awareness, we're not really supposed to get so attached to them and the identities that crystallize around them, and oh, I've got all these memories and this is me, this personality, all these things I remember, I've got to keep this, it can't go, I mustn't let go of it, I can't die and this can't all just come to nothing. That's not how you're supposed to look at life. You're supposed to hold it very lightly, to think about it playfully, and to understand that the real you isn't in here. The real you is the whole thing. It's the whole dance. Things are meant to come and go. So, a few things to think about, but the main point is really just to replace your existing view of time as a film strip along which this arrow moves to a static point called now that is utterly inescapable, but around which there is a constant flow of change that there is no purpose in recording. Okay? Well, we'll see how successful this was, or unsuccessful as the case might be.